may have a history here.
I think they
sure.
do. They're already chatting up. Joining us now, former Massachusetts Republican governor and 2016 vice presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party, William Weld. On Friday, he announced an exploratory committee to potentially challenge Trump in the 2020 Republican primary. And what has brought you to this point? What has inspired you to potentially do this again?
Honestly, Mika, I don't think the guy down there in Washington is getting the job done. I don't think he's paying attention. I'll give you just one example. We do face a national emergency in this country, and it's not building a 200-mile-long Berlin Wall. It's the fact that because of technology developments, we're going to lose 25% of all the jobs that now exist in the United States because of artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, machine learning, autonomous vehicles. The largest category of occupation in more than half the states is driving goods. And those jobs are going to be gone when the autonomous vehicles come in. But there will be replacement jobs created, and they're mostly on the technical side. And we got to, as a country, make sure that those displaced workers can get those technical skills. That will take some federal leadership.
You say that this isn't an act of protest. Can you win?
Yeah, you know, look back to 2016. The unthinkable became the inevitable twice. First in the Republican primary and then in the general election. And if you look back over the last 20, 30 years, people say, how can someone who's nowhere 2 years out possibly get elected president of the United States? I got 4 words for you. Clinton, Carter, Obama, and Trump. 2 years out, those guys, no one had ever heard of them.
75%, 80% of Republicans still support Donald Trump. So what's your pitch to New Hampshire Republicans?
Well, that's one voter at a time. New Hampshire voters like to be able to touch and feel their candidates, and it's easy for me to get there, so I think I'll probably be spending more time there than other candidates. But I'm just going to play it straight. I mean, I think the current president is a target-rich environment, and you know, he has to ask people now to put up with his antics for another 6 years. That's a long time.
Mike.
So how do you go about convincing people, and Joe just pointed out the numbers, they're staggering in terms of support for the incumbent president right now. How do you go about trying to convince or explain to people how at one level his presidency is so dangerous to the security of this country?
Oh, the foreign policy is just awful. He goes out of his way to court despots and autocrats. You know, his favorite guy is Vladimir Putin. Tell me that guy's not an autocrat. Then Kim in North Korea, the guy he's threatened to blow away with nuclear weapons. He also says, what a kid, what a great, strong kid. He iced his uncle. He even iced his own brother. He loves the guy in the Philippines who personally shoots suspected drug dealers. So it's autocracy all the way. And I think if you put the president under sodium pentothal and said, wouldn't you really prefer to have no primary and no election? He would say yes, 1,000 times
Without
yes.
sodium, not even sodium.
He might blurt it out.
Yeah.
Might.
You've talked about jobs being one of your top issues. What other issues?
I think, and forgive me for this, I mean, it's not everybody's dish of tea, but I think climate change is an enormous issue. It's going to melt the snow on the White Mountains. You know, it's going to melt all the mountain glaciers that around the world. There are hundreds of millions of people who depend on mountain glaciers as their only source of water. It's going to rearrange the coastline of every country, including the United States, because of storm surge and the melting of the polar ice cap. And to just say breezily, this is a hoax, and I'm not going to do anything about it, and I'm going to make sure that the United States contributes nothing by withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accords, that is irresponsible. The science is not iffy on this stuff.
Well, but Republicans, again, if you look at numbers, Republicans aren't moved by that issue. Were you going out to educate Republicans?
Well, they should be, and
you know,
I'm going to keep saying what I'm saying, and you know, in my book, President Trump is not a conservative. He's not a conservative on conservation, and you remember it was Teddy Roosevelt who brought in these environmental policies through the Republican Party. Another huge issue is debt and the deficit. You know, they say the president's getting ready, fixing to cast his first veto on his made-up national emergency of
Right.
the wall. That means he hasn't vetoed a single dollar of spending, $1 trillion a year of extra debt
Right.
that his administration is putting on our millennials and next generation
Republicans
people,
have been-
unfair to the younger generation.
When Republicans have run Washington, they've had a shameful record on the deficit, on the
Right.
debt, on spending. What would you do if you were the Republican president of the United States, 46th president of the United States? What would you do to bring down the deficit?
Well, the first two items of business in Washington are cut spending and cut taxes. Cutting spending comes first. Barnacle can tell you, I did cut spending in Massachusetts year over year, and I was rated the most fiscally conservative governor in the United States, actually tied with Mike Sullivan of Wyoming, who was a conservative Democrat. But we were the only A players. And, you can't say that about anybody in Washington right now. And it doesn't hurt the economy, which I'm sure the president will say. He needs the deficit to stimulate the economy. Our unemployment rate in my state went from the highest of the industrial states to the lowest in my first 3 years in office when I was cutting spending.
So I'm hearing you, a Republican, talking about climate change, starting there, but I'm thinking about the place that the Republican Party is in right now. It's in kind of a weird place, and there's the base, and then there's the Republicans on Capitol Hill who are struggling to find their voice within this world. My question is, how do you win in the primary? I mean, how do you break through and get
It's an exercise in persuasion, but, I associate the alleged base with people who felt disfranchised and that they lost their jobs or they were losing out because of globalization and developments in the worldwide economy. Okay, if they see what I was just discussing happening, all the technological developments, and they're losing their jobs outright, and the president's doing nothing about it, and so far as I know, he's doing nothing about it because he's too busy with his political slogans and build the wall and let's demonize other countries and their religions, they're not going to like that.
How do you get the jobs back?
You give the skill sets to the displaced workers and make sure that they can get them without having to take 2 years off and pay 2 years tuition at a community college. And I'm not saying make college free for everybody. I'm saying we need a GI Bill for those displaced workers. Those should be Trump voters, or they were Trump voters. We need a GI Bill for them to make sure they don't take it in the neck again.
All right. Former Governor William Weld, thank you very much. It's great
Good to be
see
here.
you.
Thank you, Governor. Good luck.
Up next, we'll talk to the DEA agent who led the manhunt for El Chapo about what really needs to be done to stop illegal drugs from coming over the southern border. And on tomorrow's show, former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe will be our guest. Morning Joe is back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.